So hello and welcome everyone. My name's Steve Pugh, if we don't know each other, and every Monday I try and do something called the Growth Strategy Podcast, where I introduce you to interesting people that can either help build your business or career, or basically just the really cool people that I think will be quite inspirational to kind of talk to and hear their story and stuff. So today I've very kindly got to meet Kiko, and I've just finished her book as well, which we're going to touch on. Fantastic lady, does a lot of work with school. She's an entrepreneur as well, which is a great link there. And I'll let her tell her own story in her own words in some ways, but actually really interesting things. So for the next kind of 30, 40 minutes, if you want to join us, hopefully it's of interest. And Kiko, I'll just bring you in. There we go. So now everyone can see you and hear you.
Hi, everyone.
Perfect. I just like to check everything works, and it does, which is cool.
Yeah.
So would you like to give just a quick overview on why I guess we're talking today and that kind of thing? And then we'll go into the detail afterwards. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure. So name is Kiko. I am, originally I was a teacher. I then became very ill with an illness called Cushing's disease. And sorry, we're just in a working house.
No, it's cool.
And as a result of that, I decided that I wanted to live my life and give back. And in a nutshell, I became the fastest woman to solo row the Atlantic whilst raising money for King's College Hospital. Also, the sort of thing that had nearly killed me 8 years before returned during my training. So kind of helped a lot with my fundraising. It was sort of the ironic twist to the story that everyone was watching me planning this rowing endeavor. And then I became ill again. So actually really made for a much better story. And then after that, I kind of wanted to use my sort of success, I suppose, to do another challenge, which I'm really passionate about the environment. So I decided to do a cycle around the UK doing beach cleans. Mm-hmm. And now I'm basically always in pursuit of a nice man. And eventually someone decided to take me on, and I've ended up in New Zealand with a former All Black, probably the only person who was mad enough. And you've got to be pretty mad to be an All Black, right? Mad enough to take me on. And so I'm now living in New Zealand, and I have a little baby, and I've just taken over a business, which is pretty cool, just running a little boat charter business and actually do some environmental education with local schools there. So that's good.
So it's not like you've got much going on then.
No, not much. Funnily enough, I feel like I'm quite lazy, but I actually love doing lots of stuff as well. Everyone's like, oh, you're so active. I'm like, I have periods of doing very little, but then I have periods of being like super cram it all in, and then nothing, and then cram it all in. So
because I know when you put up a post, I think now it was probably about 3-4 weeks ago, when you said, look, I'm moving to New Zealand. I've got a massive stock of books to get rid of. Does anyone want one? So I said yes.
Yeah.
And then very kindly you sent it to me, which is, I finished reading it. It's really, really good. But so are you still in England now, or have you moved?
Yeah. So I actually only went over to New Zealand for 2 months to see if I liked it as a country. And then coronavirus hit. So we decided that we'd stay for what was going to be like a month-long crisis. It wasn't going to be a crisis then, was it? It was just going to be a month-long kind of blip in everybody's lives, which kind of like lengthened, and babies came around, and then we decided to buy this business. Obviously mum and dad hadn't met this little addition to their ever-growing family, so we took the plunge and decided to come back for the summer. It's quite good having I've got a seasonal business, and so it means I can be in New Zealand for the summer and then come over here for the summer as well. So eternal summer, basically.
No, it's amazing. So I think if it's okay, we'll build up to the row, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
Because one of the things that I found really interesting is that it's amazing actually how many links there are between different people that have, in theory, they've all achieved different things, but actually there's a lot of key threads. So for instance, I noticed that you did Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Ironically, obviously you're very outdoorsy. What do you call it? You went to university in Newcastle, I believe.
Yeah.
But it was just funny that I think, a lot of the people I speak to have the similar building blocks, and it could be that I'm just a link and I pick people that I kind of relate to. Yeah. And likewise, I also hate litter as well. So when you do all of it, it's quite cool what you do. So what were you like at school?
I would say a friend of mine called me the cool geek. I was probably a little bit cheeky, but always managed to avoid getting properly told off, because I hate getting told off. I really will avoid it at all costs. But I would get a little bit, sometimes maybe a bit bored.
Mm-hmm.
I found school very easy. I enjoyed pretty much, like, loved it. Was in the sports teams and the choir and Young Enterprise and Gold Duke of Edinburgh. I actually went to 3 schools because I got bored of the first one, and then Mum thought that I needed to not be in a school with boys for the final one. So I left the mixed school in the middle, which I actually think was a real benefit to me, and maybe to anybody, but I just think like learning to adapt and change to new environments and, new friends and making, and I wouldn't say breaking friends, but just all that kind of, I guess for being adaptable, because you had to really, at a young age where, people little kids and girls and whatever can just be so fickle, and, I think it's quite an important thing to be able to do. So
that's cool. Honestly, it's funny actually, just in your book, a lot of freedom seems to come across. I get that, you were the nearest people were in space, and I get that kind of thing, but actually just almost the way that you wrote it, and you talk about some of your early things that you set up and what you wanted to do, and almost when you set up your first business, which was the Sup Kiko, which is the paddleboard, it was just because you liked doing it. And what I love as well, again, this is like a growth strategy business related podcast, it's just you followed your passions to try and just do something because it was cool.
Totally. I think, like, I just remember when I was teaching, I became a teacher because I'd spent quite a lot of time teaching my fellow friends and people at school, like subjects, and at university it happened again. I was like, oh, this is great. And then I got into teaching, it just wasn't quite the same. 15-year-old boys who don't like science are not the same as your friend who wants to pass their degree. But so when I realized, and then when I nearly died, and I thought, you know what, I just can't see myself teaching till I'm 70. I've got to do something about this. Otherwise I'm going to be just like, every day there's going to be a struggle. And I just hated the weekends, and I hated the end of the holidays. And basically every day was thinking about when is the next kind of time off or whatever. So, and I just kind of believed that if I followed various kind of values and things, that I would end up in the place that was meant to be, and that value would be doing something that I enjoyed and being a good human being and meeting lots of people. I don't know, I don't quite know how it's all fallen into place, but there's definitely been a lot of just
it's a serendipity.
Believing.
I think it's almost, but if you go about what you do with good intentions and you kind of find stuff that you enjoy, it's just, I could say the same thing, that, in theory you have tons of setbacks and things that go horribly wrong, but actually magically at some point it just seems to come together. Just for Denise, there's a lady called Denise who does a lot of my kind of courses and stuff. She's asked, where can she buy the book?
You can buy the book online, preferably not on Amazon. No one should ever buy a book off Amazon because it's not very good for the author or the publishers. If you Google Kiko book, it's called Polperro Press, which is the
I think there's links on your website as well.
Yeah, there are links on my website.
So is that kikomatthews.com?
.co.uk.
If in doubt, Denise, I'll send you a link, but hopefully you'll get a purchase before we even finish the next paragraph, which is quite cool.
Awesome. It's just to point out, it's a very readable book, probably written by a sort of Daily Mail age reader, not an actual Daily Mail reader, but that kind of age, if you'd agree with me.
I would. What I like to do, people like visuals, so I'll almost turn through. I'm just going to pick a random page. So it's almost like just best bits and snippets, and it is very readable. It's all kind of, short paragraphs. It's not a long wordy book, lots of cool pictures. And almost it's the journey as well, when you talk about you had to jump out and clean the boat and stuff. Denise, honestly, it's really worth your time, and I actually really enjoyed it. And actually funny, when I was talking it through with my wife's doing some marathon training, and some of the questions she's almost prepped me with, but I'll come back to them, is almost to do with the fitness and nutrition and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that people really love to learn from that, because it's quite cool. And I think, especially people are really into their sports and stuff. It's when, like, it's great, if someone does a challenge, but what you did was like mega. And it's what you learned from that and that kind of thing as well. So how did you almost start your first business? Just obviously that's what we kind of normally talk about.
So as with most of the things that happen in my life, it's all as a result of a failed attempt at something else. Generally, I wanted to set up a paddleboard charity. So I'd learned how to paddleboard on the Nile in Africa when I was over there. And when I came back to the UK, I had no idea what I was going to do as a job. But I met this man He's actually probably a boy, but he's meant to be a man. And he wanted to row. He wanted to paddle the Atlantic. And I said, well, we need to set up a charity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do something that's based around environment, education, community, paddleboarding and adventures. So I set up a charity, which was pretty eye-opening, kind of difficult experience in itself. And then when it came to actually doing the charity, like the actual day-to-day running of it, we had no money. So it was a bit difficult. And I was like, the only way I'm going to get to do these things I want to do is by setting up a business where there's basically no red tape and there's no fundraising. You can just charge people straight away. But I guess the business was out of the fact that the charity couldn't run, but I just did all the things I wanted to do in the charity in the business, like the litter picking, and I would sort of give my boards for charity events, and I took a couple of autistic kids out on the boards and worked with them, and just general. I did quite a lot of by not on purpose, but quite a lot of life coaching and stuff. Like people always come to me and go, "Oh my God, it's so amazing what you do," and like, and I would just give my experience of how I've ended up where I've ended up and why I do it, and it'd be quite interesting what people tell you when they're on a paddleboard.
So, what year was this?
So that was in 2000, and so I finished in 16, so it'd been 15, 14. Okay. 2014, 2015.
Because it's like, I've got friends that surf and stuff, but it's almost paddleboarding has almost had a resurgence where it's pretty cool now, and a lot of people, I'm not gonna say normal people, do it. So I'm in the northeast, and there's a place called Tynemouth, and basically you see people paddleboard every weekend, and now it's an easy, more accessible version of some kind of water sports and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So it's almost, you were ahead of the curve in terms of what you do. And I think the other thing that almost, a lot of marketing people now, they teach talking about your values and what's important to you and stuff, and I guess you were doing that inherently, almost, was it consciously, obviously, about the litter picking and helping different charities, and it's almost, that will have really come across, that people would have wanted to work with you and do stuff with you, almost exactly, even if it wasn't planned. Does that make sense? Because nothing worse than when people, I'm not going to say they fake stuff, but they do it for the wrong reasons, where if someone is just inherently passionate about a topic. Exactly.
That is I was going to say that earlier to you, actually, that when you're passionate and you're honest about what you're doing and you're true, that people actually want to be part of your story. They inherently want to be part of that. So I had a friend who, she was a trustee for the charity and obviously got to know me and liked me. So then when I set up the business, she's like, "Oh, I'll help you with your logo, or I'll help you with your website," and I'd be like, "Okay, I'll pay you, but it's mates rates, or I'll teach you how to paddleboard," or even sometimes she just liked to come down and be part of the buzz that was in Hackney. So on the weekends we did it down in Hackney. So she would just like to come down and sort of hang out where we were in Hackney and just be part of that. And so, you meet people, want to be part of what you're doing when they know that you're doing something good and right. And I just enjoy it. Like, litter picking is just very addictive. It was also a little bit like I felt embarrassed that I was taking people paddleboarding and the canal was absolutely rank. And I was actually, it was how it happened. It was so disgusting. I was like subtly trying to pick up things out of the canal as I was a little bit ahead of them so that they wouldn't see how dirty it was. And rather than people going, and reviewing how horrible the canal was, people would start going, "Oh, I want to come and help you. I want to be part of this. I want to do it." So I was like, "Oh, well, I'll have an actual session, which is called Trash for Treats." And people would pay a little bit less than a normal lesson, but they get a treat at the end of it. The canal gets clean. I get paid to have a team of people cleaning the canal, and everybody's kind of a winner. So like the marketing for that was, I was kind of marketing my own business through the cool things that we were doing, rather than, trying to create a false story which people don't really buy into. So but that is the dream, that so many people, they want to follow their passion. It doesn't matter what their passion is. And it's almost where I think the mistake where a lot of people go wrong is that they try and build a business to make money first, and then almost find the time to go paddleboarding, as we're actually, so when I set this up, I almost got rid of a lot of my costs and overheads, because actually it's not that it wasn't making me happy, but actually I know what makes me content, and just doing cool stuff and going camping and doing stuff. But I think, you sound like someone that almost, you're not afraid to, what's important to you, and almost build your life around it and tackle stuff that almost a lot of people would scare them off, kind of thing. I think there's a little bit of confidence, and I don't think I didn't just fall into it. It's taken time to sort of, I guess the near-death experience helped, because I was like, screw this, don't really care, because I'm not really meant to be here. So I kind of just went for it, because there was no way I was going to be teaching for the rest of my life. But I kind of do talks occasionally. I've done a few talks on purpose, and I think that purpose before profit, you actually end up making more profit if your company has got, or your business has got a purpose at the heart. So I also say purpose, people and planet, my kind of three, and then the profit kind of rolls in as a result. But I've never been motivated by money, but it's ironic because I do actually seem to kind of make a reasonable amount. And actually I find that when you've got a job that is full of purpose and you're happy, you don't need to spend so much money. So much money is spent because you're not happy doing the things that you're doing, and you need to spend it to kind of almost justify that you're making it. But if you're doing something that you love and you're happy, you don't need all the kind of things, because every day is a good day, and every day is a holiday, and every day is a happy day, and you're doing something good. So you don't need to spend it on other things.
No, I couldn't agree more. But I think what's quite funny is that I think it takes time and age and wisdom to learn that. I think if you asked a 20-year-old that, they'll probably disagree. But then again, that people go through that kind of journey. But it's almost quite cool when you learn it, because it's almost like you've hacked life, you've hacked this game that we're doing.
Yeah, totally.
And when you've kind of figured it out, it's like, well, actually, I could happily live off 20 grand a year and just get the fulfillment off stuff and teaching people and getting feedback and that kind of thing, which is cool. Like, one of the things I love is just talking to cool people and learning. And that's why I love reading books, is just because you pick up things that I would never otherwise know or meet. And then just because I'd set this up, because I like talking to people, we actually get to talk, and it's brilliant. And but this makes me happy in a way that other stuff doesn't. Does that make sense? And it sounds really stupid,
totally.
but
it's not stupid at all. I think that's what we should be taught that at school. We're taught at school that you need to get good grades to go to a good university, to get a good degree, so you can get a good job that makes good money. And it's like, well, why are we taught all of that? Because that's not actually
it's true.
Really what it should be about. We should be teaching.
This has gone to a very socialist angle, but it's because that feeds the machine that feeds everything else, isn't it? If everyone kind of made the decision to be like, no, I'm good, it would the whole thing would slow down. But then it is what it is. But it's almost then when people do hack the system and figure out what makes them happy, other people want to know how they did it. Although actually not many people would make the sacrifice. One quick question before we move on, just because I have friends that are teachers and all they ever do is complain about how bad teaching is. Is teaching as bad as people say it is?
So I would say I love the kids, even the naughty ones, because the minute you get a naughty one out of the classroom, there's probably 1 in 1,000 who is like a nasty human, but generally they're all right. I love the subject. I love the concept of teaching. It's just the 90% of all the other stuff that's involved. I don't think the system is as it should be. I don't think it works for 80% of the kids, which is really sad. I don't like the parents. They're either you can't get hold of them, or they won't let you go. You've got this constant sort of like exam thing which you've got to do. You've got homework at the end of the day. You've got homework at the weekend. And everyone goes, oh, you loads of holiday. But I'd rather have my job spread over a normal working year when I could take my job, like my holidays, whenever. But you end up with this kind of horrible feeling every Sunday night, every kind of weekend before the end of a half term, every week before the beginning of a new year, where it's just like that dread of, oh my God. And the classes are too big. It's a kid who really needs support and you just can't do it. And it's like the whole thing is just the most frustrating thing when most teachers go into teaching because they like children, they like their subject, they like teaching, but there's so little of what they actually like. It's just disillusioned, it's disillusioned by what it really kind of should be or could be.
So it's almost, Denise's comment, and it's almost like it's the politics, it's the system which almost ruins it. It takes away the magic away from what could be amazing. Yeah. No, it kind of makes sense.
So like on the paddleboards, the idea was that we would take a group, you could take a group on a paddleboard and you could teach them about all sorts of stuff, like inner confidence. You could get them they would develop their confidence by not being able to paddleboard, and by the end of the session being able to paddleboard. And you could talk about like what that is and how that is. And then you could talk about the trees and the river and the tides and the weather and, anything that could be, related to. So there's so many different, and that is what I loved about being a paddleboard teacher and having the business, is I was kind of doing all the things that I loved in an environment that I kind of enjoyed, even if it wasn't a kid and it's not like an adult, but it's still.
So what happened? I'm trying to go in chronological order. Did you first get sick after this? Or?
So I got sick in 2009, I think, between two schools. And then I nearly died. So that was an illness called Cushing's, caused by a pituitary tumour. And basically the hormone that was being produced pretty much went for every part of my body, and ended up in intensive care in King's College Hospital. And then when they took it out, it was only like 6 millimeters. but tiny little thing doing a lot of damage. I then went to my second school, and kind of halfway through that, I was like, it's no different from the first school. Shouldn't really be here. Need to live my life. And at that point, I hadn't actually got any passions. The only thing I was kind of interested in was the environment, which my teacher of teaching had kind of got me into. And I had one of my ex-boyfriends was really passionate about climbing, and I'd always been a bit like, oh, I want to have a passion, you know. I don't. I want to love something that much that, you know, I do whatever to have that in my life a lot. And so I kind of set out, I guess, a little bit to find what my passion was, or what I like doing, even just what I like doing, and ended up in Africa on the Nile, learning to paddle.
Wow.
Came back to London.
Did you travel quite a lot then?
Yeah, so it's kind of started, the Duke of Edinburgh bit obviously kind of helped, and I did a fair bit of sort of charity work when I was young. I don't know why I did all these things. They just obviously were instilled in me or something. And then I had a year out after sort of not working out at Edinburgh for about 2 weeks. Had a year out, did a bit of travel. Then my fiance at the time had a best friend who was paralyzed from the shoulders down, and they were going to drive down to Kenya. Then they changed it to Cape Town. He was going to drive every kilometre, the paralyzed guy, and I was going to kind of go as support, which I did do. I went Ethiopia. I disengaged from said fiance, and then carried on traveling with them to Cape Town for another 4 months, and we raised 500 grand, and the guy in the wheelchair, Colin, sort of succeeded in his mission to drive every kilometre. I think that was really important, that trip, because it taught me that actually kind of the value of the purpose in that challenge, those challenges that I faced, because I felt like I couldn't leave because I was part of his team. And if I left, it might put his trip and his dream at like, my English is so bad, you know, detriment. So I kind of carried on, despite the fact that my ex-fiance was in the Land Rover with us the whole way down to, and it was so horrible to me. Understandably, I kind of dumped him. So, you know, that kind of post split up meanness. And kind of, so I guess that and then after that, I spent my wedding money on a little round the world trip. So when I was 16, I went to Canada with the cadets. There's various little things. I blame it on my third child syndrome, because I'm the middle child. So I think I've always like tried to be different, or more crazy, or more interesting, or more, or better.
If it helps, I'm the second child, but I agree with what you're saying. This always used to annoy me, is that my mom doesn't watch these, so I can say this, but she'd always say that my older brother was the smart one, and he found school really easy. He was right to work hard at everything. But almost, I think inherently from like a kid, like 4 years old, I was at a chip on my shoulder to beat my brother. And it was just, so I learned to ride a bike before him. And I think now it's almost that, just, you know, I'm a nightmare.
It's that competitive. I guess you have to be slightly careful on the sort of the character of the child, that you don't instill some sort of like real, you know, negative chip, because some people will go like that's competition, I'm going to beat them, which is what I did. But it is funny, isn't it? Those kind of messages that kids in the position in the family that they get, and how it turns out.
Can I ask, did you have, or do you have any, say, sports people in the family, you know, older than you, like parents, grandparents, anything?
Nope. My dad is basically allergic to water because he had 2 dodgy ears when he was a kid. But all of his sports are, I think he rowed for his college when he was at uni, but that's about it. He likes fishing and that. My brother is okay at tennis, but doesn't do anything. My sister is a Pilates teacher, and my younger brother was basically bullied at school because he was so shit at sport. Excuse my language. So yeah, I don't really know where
because like, how did you discover rowing?
I didn't really. The adventure discovered me, and then I realized I had to learn how to row. Because
like, so my dad was a champion cyclist. He was national road race champion, so I was like, that was drilled into me as a kid. But ironically, because he loved it so much, and that was his passion, when you said about passions before, me and my brother were forced to do it, and therefore we hated it because we were forced to. Anyway, but at least I had good cardio because I got it in theory from him and his dad, whatever. But almost like what you did, and rowing is a very cardio intensive sport that you, obviously I've read the book. How tall are you? I'm just trying to get a feel for
5'9"ish, just under 5'9".
Quite tall, but it's that balance of where rowing isn't the easy thing that you might just fall into. It's just how did you get the idea then to, you know what?
So it's always a bit of a joke because basically everything I fall into is because I fancy a man and I've done something to get him into my bed. But anyway, so I was this guy who was the guy who wanted to paddle the Atlantic. The boat or the vessel he would have used was exactly the same pretty much as the one that I used. Mm-hmm. So he said, oh, there's this guy called Charlie Pitcher who's got this boat, who builds ocean rowing boats, so he'll build a paddleboard for me. Let's go and visit him. So we kind of over, I think it was about a 2-year period or 2.5-year period, we kind of have been having meetings with this guy. And then as my Cushing's, which I didn't know had come back, was kind of obviously developing inside, my craziness and my confidence and my what a great idea this would be sort of like was creeping into my head. So I think by 2016, it was a bit of a joke. Mum said that she thought Prince Harry would be a good boyfriend. And I was like, oh, what a great idea. Like, why not? But rather than sort of buying a nice dress and going to all the right places to meet him, I thought I'd go for the women's record in the guy's boat that he had got his record in. And that Prince Harry, and I'd raise money for Help Heroes, and he'd hear about me and he'd think that I'd be great for the crown and, you know, the country. Obviously I failed miserably, but that's kind of how that came out. And then I had to learn how to row. And you talk about cardio, like, yes, when you're sitting on a rowing machine training, it is important for cardio. But when you're out on the Atlantic, it's so little of it is about the rowing itself. Yeah. Obviously, if you just sat in the boat, you'd eventually get there, but you're not going to get a record. Yeah. Boat was
in one of the chapters. You talked about you did some sort of rowing competition, and didn't you win it? I think. Yeah,
I did a marathon. So I can't do mindless training for no reason. Like the idea of sitting on a rowing machine and just doing stuff. So I thought, right, I'll just do a marathon. That's like I'll do a marathon on London Marathon Day. So that someone down at Limehouse that I'd met has got a little like market going on. So I was like, right, I'll go and set up my stall and do a marathon. I had not trained specifically for it. And I think I had a really alcoholic tiramisu just before. I was like, get some calories down. And it was like laced with something or other. And I had a few meetings with people. I said, oh, I'm doing a marathon, come down and we'll talk. Because I knew I was just going to be like pulling like at speaking speed. And when I finished, I kind of, you can log it onto a platform. And I think I came 8th in the world for women of that year. I think it was of all women, I think it was for that year. And I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. But at that point, I didn't realize that my tumor had returned, and actually the tumor makes me super strong. Most people, it kind of makes me super strong at the beginning, and I was like, you know, I was stacked, and I was thinking, God, I'm really good at rowing. And then I realized it was just because I got testosterone rushing around my body and turning me into a man.
Can you imagine though, if someone just tried to run a normal marathon and they were the 8th fastest person in the world, like first time?
No, but there's not many people sitting on a rowing machine doing marathons, so the competition is very small.
I think there's probably more than you think. Like the amount of people that do ultra marathons that run 150 miles, there's a lot of them, you know, more than you'd think. And it's just, and it was from that, it was, you know, there still has to be inherent talent there that a lot of people couldn't do that.
Yeah, I suppose.
Do you ever watch Avengers films? Does Steve Rogers, who's Captain America, has his super serum? So it's almost like your tumor was giving you the superpower.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. And I remember overtaking this guy on his bike. He was probably a bit of a mammal, one of these middle-aged men in lycra, and he was all in lycra. And I was on a really sort of standard mountain bike with my trainers and just my sort of shorts and t-shirt. And we're going up the hill in Clapham, and there's a very sort of slight coming from Brixton up to Clapham, I think it is, and you're kind of slowly climbing, and it was at rush hour, so there were like 10, 15 of us, and I was just like cruising past all of them, and this guy kind of looked at me as I just say like, why is there a girl on a mountain bike in her trainers overtaking me? And I was thinking, oh, I'm so fit, and like, yeah, but again, didn't realize that I was actually under the influence of a
embrace it all counts. So how then, so if we jump straight to the actual challenge, what I thought was hilarious was when you actually left port, realized you'd forgot something and then went back and didn't tell anyone.
So classic me. That's how I took it. So I was rowing out, done an hour, said goodbye to everyone, and I was like, oh, it's time to take my medication, because I'd had brain surgery like 6 months before I left, and my pituitary gland hadn't kicked back into working. So I was on hydrocortisone and growth hormone because neither of those were being produced. And I was like, oh, it's time to take my meds. I was like, I've got one. Where's the other? Oh my God. I've left it in the fridge because it needs to be refrigerated. So I was like, oh, I phoned up and he's like, no, sorry, we've all left. We're in the airport. I'm like, oh. So I had to row back and go and get it.
So did the clock start when you first left or when you left second time?
I just restarted it because
makes sense. Yeah.
It's not like an official start of a race or anything. So I just went to the pub and had some fish and chips and a pint. And I actually bought a pack of cigarettes because I was like, oh, that would just be naughty and nice when I'm in the middle of the Atlantic.
I just really hope that people watching this they can see what I meant at the start, where there is a laissez-faire attitude to how this all seems to fall into place. But I love it, but it's you watch the Olympics and people train and they have lean chicken and they won't hit, it's the opposite of what you've done. And
Mum has always said that to me. She goes like, when you play tennis, are you concentrating? I'm like, I am concentrating. And when I got my GCSE, she was like, now don't worry, if you don't do very well, your father and I will still support you. I'm like, I know I'm doing, but I just have that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Kind of very relaxed. And I think it's almost like it's so low stress. My attitude towards everything is so like, well, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? And that low stress actually is massively beneficial because you don't stress about like what you're eating or specifically, or if you've got it right perfectly or whatever it is. And that lack of stress is obviously some sort of element of that benefit to the outcome. I don't know, that's just the way it seems to work for me. So
when you obviously planned for the trip, you can tell I've read the book, so I just don't even have to look at the notes. It was obviously, you had all your stuff read and you had your weatherman, was it James?
Angus,
that was it.
Yeah.
And it's just how much of the trip do you feel was weather related? Because you talk about some of the waves and things that there were days when you were just literally still, nothing happening, bored out your mind. And then others when you just, almost you worry about capsizing kind of thing.
Yeah. So it very much varies. So for those of you who aren't aware of trade winds and stuff, I'm not expecting anyone to be. They kind of go from Gran Canaria where I left to Barbados where I finished off. That's kind of the standard trade wind route. And like 2 months before I left, they had the best trade winds ever and every record was being smashed. And then it came to my trip and that kind of had died down, but I had almost like storm force winds in the first week just to throw me into it and get me used to it. And to the point where I thought I was going to almost not quite, but I almost thought I was going to break the man's record. I was going so fast. To then beautiful mirror, calm, hard work, because there's like every stroke counts and you're tugging a 350 kilo boat. But you haven't got the stresses of like, is my boat going to capsize? What if something breaks? Or how do I like slow my boat down because it's going so fast? Or there was a 50-foot wave and I'm thinking, shit, like, is this the end of my life? Or am I going to make it? But then when you're on flat calm, you're kind of oh, where's the wind gone? So in terms of the record and just the crossing itself, the weather definitely plays a part. But then on top of that, you need to have strength to pull the boat when there's no wind and mental strength to be like, okay, I've got this, when it's like super speedy and you're trying to manage a boat and yourself and whether you're scared or not on the bigger weathers. So bit of half and half maybe.
So I remember I read Ellen MacArthur's book a long time ago, but obviously she had sails. And just so everyone understands, we're talking like a big canoe type. You two can probably describe it better than I can, but there's no sails to help catch wind. This is you with some oars and then obviously the boat itself. I just wanted to make sure people know that this is it was done the hard way. Like proper rowing.
I mean, I would rather row than sail, because I'd be like, if you capsize in a sailing boat, there's no way you're getting that thing back up again. Usually you capsize the rowing boat, it like pops up. But it's like a little pod capsule. There's very controversial in the ocean rowing world that the way they're designed means they do have, like, behind me is like the door of my cabin, so it's probably this wide behind me and it's probably just that much above me, so there is a sort of a platform for the wind to hit. But it's not a kind of flappy sail which you can cruise at 15-20 knots with. But it's not like I'm not in a flat board.
No, honestly, I think it's fascinating. And obviously for Denise, that she's now ordered the book as well, so she can really enjoy.
Thanks, Denise.
But again, it's just I love doing this. So how long was the record? How long did you take to cross?
So it was 56 days originally, and I wanted to do it in 45. I did it in 49 days.
But you were quite unlucky with some of the winds and weather systems and things as well. So it was
Yeah.
What was the best bit of the trip? Because what I thought was quite funny is that when you'd did you type or did you voice record your
I was doing it
notes?
on I just did my phone, so I just write the email blog. So I just write an email to someone as the blog, and then
Because it was
send
when you said that you almost lost track of the days because it was just the same. You couldn't see anyone apart from you saw a shark and you were like, I'm not getting in today.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very monotonous, and you like, I could write down loads of things that kind of happened, but there were lots of, you're like, oh, how many shifts have I done today? What am I? What, like, and also because you're always working on English time. So as you cross the time zones, you're going like, it's nighttime and it's still, I don't know, it's like, 5 hours wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You completely lose track of how many shifts you've done, what day it is, what you've seen. You have got the like anchor points in your life to, apart from like the odd thing like a shark. Was that yesterday or was that 2 days ago? Or and like breakfast, lunch and dinner are obviously sort of like your anchor points of the day. But what was my favorite? There were moments which were just incredible that you just think, I can't believe that I'm in the middle of the Atlantic and there's like no one for miles. But it was on one of those really flat, calm days, and I remember it must have been February. I think it was February the 28th or February the 27th, and there was a big full moon on my left and a big sun, a big full sun coming up for sunrise over there, and it was like flat, calm, and it was just like this beautiful kind of out in nature. And then another time at night time when it was really flat, and I could hear this. And like dolphins with this sort of moon shimmering down, these dolphins kind of like actually going that way, swimming past me on either side. And there was a school of dolphins that were definitely playing for me, which was pretty cool.
No, that's cool.
And obviously finishing was great.
So over the course of the trip, obviously you broke the record, which is awesome, but you also raised over £100,000 for the charity.
Yeah.
Would you almost like to talk about what that meant to you and what that means for the charity? Almost just it's a bit of a plug for the good work that they do. Is that cool?
Yeah, so it's for King's College Hospital, which is an amazing, for their charity arm, because every hospital or trust has its own charitable arm, which pays for all the additional like bits that the government basically doesn't pay for. So they are building a new intensive care unit, which is like state of the art for at the moment it's in like some like all intensive care units like dark and dingy with the odd little like roof window. This is a full ceiling to floor to ceiling like windows, and there's a garden outside where you can wheel people out, and so all these little extra added extras. And to begin with, I think when I was like joking about Prince Harry and and Help for Heroes, which is an amazing charity, but it didn't really ring anything to me. There was no kind of connection to Help for Heroes apart from Prince Harry. And then I kind of thought about, when I was ill, I could barely get up the stairs. My muscles had like wasted away so badly. Then I was in intensive care on my last legs, and here I was kind of about to embark on this slightly crazy journey that needed every part of my body and mind to be functioning properly. And if it wasn't for King's and the team there, then I wouldn't be doing it. And King's is an incredible hospital that does a lot. I mean, its intensive care unit was the number one for Grenfell Tower, and so all the big things that ever happen. King's College Hospital is like number one for, you get sent there basically. So they've got an amazing team, and it made such difference to me when I was doing my row, and I'm thinking, oh, I can't really be bothered, and then I'm thinking, well, actually, you can't be like that because you're doing and you're raising money for this charity that's actually means a lot to you and is going to help. Like it's only 100 grand, and the centre probably is like millions, but every little helps, I guess. So
no, I think it's ace, and I think, but it's that kind of, it's the purpose that you've, it's nice, and it's almost, I'm guessing that drives you kind of now. So can I ask almost what happened? Because when did you finish the row? What year was it?
March 2018.
2018. So it's pre-COVID. And then what's happened since? Just I'm interested. I don't know. Is the answer.
So I then wanted to use my fame, not so much fortune, but my my fame to do my next thing, which I'm passionate about, which was the environment and education and stuff. So rather than raising money, because I obviously asked everyone for money last year, it was like I'd rather get people involved. And actually, there's different people who do different things in terms of giving and stuff. Some people have got money to give, they haven't got time. Some people have got time, but they haven't got money. So this was kind of a project where everyone could be involved. Obviously, you had to live somewhere near the coast, but the idea was I would cycle, not really a big cyclist, but I cycle around the coast of the UK, which was my challenge. And then my kind of give back purpose bit was a beach clean at the end of each day, and a big fan of community, because I just think we can achieve so much more if we work together and support each other. Like my row had been very much about me, but I had got this group of women which had fundraised for the boat or supported the project. So that was like my community for the boat. And I fully believe that, well, I know that it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had them, because I wouldn't have had the money to pay for the boat. So I kind of always believed that they were part of that record. So yeah, this was kind of about average, I think, 60 miles a day. And then we do a beach clean for about an hour, and then go to bed, wake up next day, do the same thing. And again, the kind of the purpose of that is I had to cycle. So come wind, rain or shine or whatever I was feeling, had a rough cold one day, and I was like, oh, I've got to get to the next. I think it was from John O'Groats as well, and it was horrible. And I had to get to the next one because there's like a community of people waiting for their beach clean for me to turn up. So that purpose really works for me and works to like keep me going, which is kind of my, I don't know. Yeah, that's the bit that's helpful.
Just out of interest, did you take a tent, or did you just blag to sleep in people's spare rooms?
I got to the point there that I could fundraise enough money to do it supported. So I actually had, and to be honest, it was better that way, because I had someone who would drive the van, do the social media, answer the emails, organise otherwise I would have been like, I couldn't have done that.
But that's a hell of a challenge. It's funny that you talk about the book about you were always looking for your next challenge. So obviously you've got a little one now. What's your next challenge, or is it just parenting?
So my next challenge is to cycle around New Zealand in a figure of 8 with baby in a little mini chariot, a little baby chariot behind me on an e-bike, but it's for a very sort of big household name called Plunket, which is about baby. It's a government, but with a charitable arm, looking after mothers and babies and their families. And the charity bit is very much more for the more vulnerable and needy mothers and families, rather than so I had a Plunket nurse come and see me for 6 weeks to make sure, or 2 months to make sure the baby was putting on weight, and I was breastfeeding going and all this sort of stuff. But if I needed, they've got a service till you're 5. Wow. So they actually approached me and said, would I do something for them? And I was like, oh, this is great. People are now asking me to do challenges for them. So that would be cool. And it's a challenge that, I'm doing it with someone. I'm doing it with a little one this time. That's going to be. I
read Ranulph Fiennes' book. Weirdly, I appeared to be into adventurers, but I didn't even think it was. Yeah. And he talks about how actually when he went through his life, obviously he got kicked out of the army, and again he did it for the adventure. It had nothing to do with money or fame. He just wanted the challenge. And so again, the dream is almost, how do you get the fundraising? How do you get people to do it? But what crossed my mind whilst we talk is almost that you mentioned about how you were the third child and almost how that sculpted you. I can't even imagine what your kids are going to be like when they grow up. It's just, I'll go one way or the other. They'll either hate the outdoor stuff or change the world. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, one or the other. She can do whatever she likes. She's got a serious name and a hippie name. So she's called Genevieve Ocean. So if she wants to, be a hippie and change the world, she can be called Ocean. If she wants to be serious, and she can be called Genevieve. That was the plan.
It's ace. So just as we start to wrap up, and it's funny, before we came on air kind of thing, we did joke because we can both talk quite a lot, and you worry. My record, ironically, for an interview, it's because the lady's lovely, but she kept talking, was an hour and 37 minutes. So the fact that we're still 45 minutes in, we're actually doing pretty well. So this is pretty bob on, which is ace. Would you be happy to share the best piece of advice you ever had?
That I ever had, or that I have? I'm not sure.
Well, okay, so my next question is, if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be? Yeah. So that's what you have to give. But almost, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I probably didn't listen. To be honest, I'm really like the most rubbish person that, who inspires you and what books you read that I do it all through experience and through, I kind of just,
But the funny
I
thing is,
don't know.
I think all the best people do.
Yeah.
It's almost, I don't know about
I
you, but
haven't,
people ask me sometimes, oh, so who's your mentor? You know, some people have like local mentors or
yeah,
business mentors. I don't. I get mine from books and inspiration. I'll see
yeah,
stupid stuff and I'm like, and it's just, but it's nice again to meet people that almost, they don't need external like energy or
yeah.
motivation. You just kind of crack on and do it. And it's the way that you
Yeah, I
do it.
think all the things that I've done that I've made mistakes from probably is the things that I've then, used those as those wise words to myself. Don't do that again. Or, like, what did you do wrong there? Or don't worry about it. Do you want me to answer your next question or do you want to ask it first?
You can roll straight into it. It's cool. I mean,
I would say probably like, they're all kind of a similar thing. Don't worry about things that you can't control and don't try and control the uncontrollables, those sort of things. You waste so much energy on, worried about the fact you're going to be late because your train's late. Well, you can't do anything about it. The train's late. You worrying about it is not going to change the speed of the train. And just to live your life, because you genuinely do not know when, not even like the last minute, but the time, there might be a moment when tomorrow things change and you can't live it the way that you've always dreamt to because you have an accident or something happens. So you've got to live every minute for what it is. And just don't worry about life. Don't worry about it.
But even from your own stories, is that in the book you talk about how there was no point worrying about the weather or dying at sea because if it happens, it happens. But even your friend when you drove through Ethiopia, paralyzed from neck down, shoulders down, but still managed to drive the length of Africa. The point is, even if something really bad happens to you, it's almost, you can still kind of get through it. And then likewise, whilst you are hopefully fit and healthy, enjoy it, do it. Don't really care what other people think. I think it's
exactly.
it's class. Is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go? Websites, charities, socials, anything?
No, I mean, if you would like to follow me for some, it's not daily inspiration. People say it's inspiring, but I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot of baby spam going on at the moment. No, obviously my book is still for sale. That one, Kiko's got a very original title. And my Toyota Hiace is for sale as well, which I'm very sad about. But no, I don't think so. Apart from just, people living their life and purpose and going out there and being the best that they can be, I don't really have anything if people want to find out more, they can look me up, I suppose.
No, cool. Been watching much of the Olympics? I'm just out of interest.
I have actually. It's a bit weird because I watch it. I kind of see it on the BBC app in the morning when I wake up, and then I watch a bit of it on telly, and I feel like I've watched it already. So I'm a bit confused about because it's a time difference, I guess. But they're pretty amazing. I think some of those athletes are.
With the did you see the BMX yesterday?
Yeah.
And it was the girl that fell. I forget her name, but basically she was going for goal, and it was best of two runs.
Yeah.
And she went for this trick that had never been done before, and she went for it, and she fell pretty hard.
Yeah.
But then what I absolutely love was that when on her last second run, she went for it again, and she went even harder, and she nailed it, and she got gold.
Yeah.
But it's that willingness to just be like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And if she could have come last, and that takes bravery.
And then you can't really win at life. You can't win at life if you don't challenge yourself and be willing to fail. So like, she could have gone easy and got a bronze or not even got a medal and been fine. But she was like, it's all or nothing. And unless you have that kind of that risk taking kind of attitude, where you'll be fine. You'll get through life, but you're never going to really, be the best you if you don't push yourself to the point where you're going to fail at some point. So I think, failure is, as they say, first attempt in learning. It's that you've got to challenge yourself in order to grow. And really be your best you, I guess. Cool.
But it's just, I love it when you see it, and it's the heart to think,
true.
Fuck it, I'm going to do it. It just gets me all excited.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? And then she's like the final little trick at the end, which is to say, I've nailed it. I'm going to try and nail it even more.
No, I think it's ace. And that's one of the things I love about the Olympics is just, it's that, I love it when people throw the heart on the sleeves, and it's the people that aren't expected to do well and they just go for it. And it's that for me is what the Olympics is all about. And it's the
Italian 100-meter runner.
Yes.
Who's just like, who's he?
but that's what's great about sport. But it's the stories behind it. And actually, the one that really got me was did you see the high jump? I think it was yesterday.
No, I haven't.
These two guys, one Italian and one, I think he was Ethiopian. Don't get me wrong. And they both jumped best PBs, whatever. And they basically, they were tied at like 2 meters 37. And they both had like a jump off where they had 3 jumps and they failed all 3 because it was so high. And then I think it was the Ethiopian guy basically said to him, can we just call it a draw and both get gold? And they both won. And rather than being selfish and just, no, I think I can beat him and go. Oh, it's just, it makes me tear up. Nice. Honestly, cool. But that's, I think, when obviously you're off to New Zealand and you've been around the world and stuff, you kind of, it's when you realize that people around the world are inherently, not everyone, nice people, and it's that adventure, I think, is pretty cool. So I won't keep you any longer. I genuinely thank you for the time. Anyone, please buy the book and follow Kiko's socials and stuff, and I will continue to do what I can and be a good person and pick up litter and do stuff as well. And thank you. Best of luck with everything.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much
for
having
me.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye.